Communion and one of the promoters of economy of communion in the Philippines and East Asia, former CEO of Banco Cabayan and Rural Bank, that has been often mentioned as an example of economy of communal enterprise. So despite the time zone, she's able to join us today. So it's a great joy, Teresa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So let's now welcome John Mandel from United States. So Joe Mandel is CEO of Mandel and Associates, which was founded in 1995 to provide professional earth and environmental consulting services to industry, municipalities, governmental agencies, engineering firms, and the legal community. He's also a member of the International Commission of EOC and one of the promoters of EOC in North America. So he introduced us into today's topic. Over to you, John.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and welcome everyone from around the world. I'm coming to you from the United States, and I think I'm really going to enjoy today because we got some of my favorite people in the world on this Zoom call. So today we're going to be talking about the economy of communion, and one in particular, one entrepreneur from the United States will give their testimony. Let me say a few words about the economy of communion for those who may be joining us. The economy of communion is an international economic and social movement made up of citizens, of workers, of scholars and students such as yourselves, but also entrepreneurs and people in need. And really, one of our main objectives is to transform, together with other civil realities, the whole market economy into a more humane environment. How's that for a challenge, right? The backbone of these efforts is the worldwide network of economy of communion companies, which commit themselves to following management principles and beliefs that help them bring universal values like liberty, fraternity, equality, and communion to bear on their day-to-day decisions while working in a normal market economy. And so, how do these businesses see themselves? They see themselves as people-centered organizations. We work together to meet the needs of our customers and our stakeholders, just like many businesses do. But we try to do this while giving back to society and to our local communities, really always aware of the well-being of others and the common good. And we try to build workplaces of mutual respect, ones in which there's an openness and transparency and communication, which helps to empower everyone. So this year, we also celebrate the 30th anniversary of the Economy of Communion's founding in Brazil in 1991 by Chiara Lubich and close collaborators there. And during this time, the last 30 years, we've seen many global challenges. We've seen the EOC expand across the globe and insert itself into various cultures within each continent. We've been challenged to live our values and to survive, and in some cases, to fight for survival. We've had thousands of business owners involved and tens of thousands of workers and employees and people who've also been aided by the economy of communion. And now we find ourselves in another unique time period, critical, the COVID and post-COVID time, right? Another challenge. It's absolutely wreaked havoc on our local economies and small businesses, where disadvantaged people have been the hardest hit and will likely be the slowest to recover from this pandemic. So in the United States, much of our financial assistance has tried to go to small businesses, but they haven't always found their way to support those in the front lines, the essential workers, the people in restaurants or grocery stores. They've been left on the margins many times. And this has left our local economies frail and wounded and on the edge of not making it. So how's that for a challenge for you? This challenge we face is to rebuild this economic system more focused on people and the common good and less on the absolute bottom line of the business. So that's a very brief EOC history of 30 years. And we really want to give a chance for our main speaker to speak. I'll introduce him. His name's Andrew Gustafson. He's a professor of business ethics and society at Creighton University. Creighton is a Jesuit university in the heartland of America. Andy teaches undergraduates and master's students and doctoral students, and also courses including business ethics, business and faith, and big data ethics. Andy's a little bit unusual too. His training is in philosophy, so he's a philosophy person inserted into a business school, which brings a wealth of value to his students. And Andy grew up on a farm in central Nebraska. You'll hear a little bit more about his background, but we first met Andy about 5 years ago. He had been introduced to the economy of communion by two professors of business, John Gallagher and Michael Naughton. And he was introduced in the Philippines Tess. You might find that interesting.
Oh.
And I guess I will say this before turning it over to Andy, is that when Andy came to the first meeting, I think it was at Catholic University, and everyone introduced themselves, and Andy was very humble and shy and said he was a business professor. But at one point in that weekend, Andy stood up and shared a little bit about what he did. And the unusual thing is we have a philosophy professor in a business school who is also an entrepreneur. And he went on to share his experience of his real estate business. And when he was done, there was a silence. And Andy had ended up telling us that he hoped that, he liked what he was hearing about the economy of communion and wondered if he really fit in. And I remember standing up, or someone standing up, I think I might have said something, and we said, Andy, you are the economy of communion. What you're doing is such an inspiring thing. This fits right in with our philosophy. So I won't tell you his story because I'll let Andy tell you that, but I am so happy that he's here to share with you, Sophia students and everyone around the world, a bit about his experience of entrepreneur, how he views his role as being an entrepreneur and what he believes in. So Andy, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you share your experience and your story.
Thank you, John. And John is right. I was really conscripted into the EOC. I had no choice. They stood up and said, you are part of the EOC. I said, don't we have to apply or something? He said, no, you are now part of it. So I said, okay. So I didn't have a lot of choice in it, but I'm very grateful. And I'm also very grateful for John's leadership here in the North America EOC. I don't know what we would do without him. And he's been a great mentor to me in getting to see the example he has. I've gone to visit his company in Ohio Indiana. And so I've been there a number of times, gotten to interact with John a number of times. I really appreciate just who he is as a person and who he is as a business leader. So thanks, John. Thanks for being here. And I was really happy that you were going to be here today. Thanks also to Benedetto Guy. I thank you for your invitation, and I'm happy to be here and to talk and share. Each of us, God has put each of us in a very different situation. I happen to be in Omaha, Nebraska, in the middle of the United States. I was not raised in EOC or Focolare, but I'm a big fan. And I've found them to have a lot of resources and ways of thinking about things that have helped me a great deal. I'm also Protestant, not Catholic, but yet I learn a lot from the Catholic social thought and the teachings of the different popes. I was really blessed to get to go to hear Pope Francis speak to the EOC in 2017. And so I'm very grateful to have a connection to the EOC, and I thank each of you for being here today and taking time to hear the little things that God has taught me about business. And I'm sure I could learn a lot from each one of you as well. So I want to have time for questions, so I'm going to get right into the presentation, if that's okay. And we'll get going. Just got to make sure I can share my screen. Yeah. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Okay, very good. So this is, of course, the motto for what we were doing today. So this is maybe a beginning point. So what we do, I'll talk more about it, but this is the same building. When we first bought it, it had been abandoned for a number of years. There had been a homicide in it and nobody wanted it. And we bought it and we fixed it up. Not everybody likes my paint job, but I'm Swedish in heritage, so I like the Swedish colors. So blue and yellow is what my neighbors have to deal with. Some love it and some don't like it. And this is just a picture. I will talk about these guys later, but frequently we will meet on the front porch of my house. We've done this for years to talk about what we're going to do for the day, different projects we have. And so this is really how my stuff started, was doing this. And these are different characters that live in my neighborhood, as well as some other professional contractors who have become good friends of mine. And you'll learn more as we go along with that. So who am I? So these are both who I am. I don't have any hair in this one, and then I have hair here. So I've gotten more hairy during the COVID epidemic. But I'm a Christian, first of all. I'm a son of a farmer, so that makes me pretty practical and pragmatic. But I also am a philosopher. So you have the theory and the practice coming together. That's how I think about it anyway. Also teach business ethics at Creighton University, like John said. And I like being able to use examples of what I'm doing in business in my classes. It helps the students feel like it's more real. I am an entrepreneur. In Omaha, I'll show you, but I'm responsible for 116 toilets for other people because I rent them an apartment. So if they have a toilet problem, it's not their problem, it's my problem. And that's part of what an entrepreneur does, takes on risk that others in society don't want in order to help society. So it goes both ways. So there's benefits that come to an entrepreneur if you're successful, but then others don't have those risks. And last, I'm a student of Catholic social thought. So I've learned a lot about it, and I continue to learn as a student what's going on in CST. This is just some of our properties in Omaha mostly. A couple of these are in my hometown and a couple hours from Omaha. My wife and I grew up in central Nebraska, and now we live in Omaha, the big city in Nebraska on the edge. But these are some of the properties. I'll show you a few before after pictures as we go. So what do? Communion properties, we buy properties that are usually, sometimes they are condemned by the city. You're not allowed to go in unless it gets fixed up. We fix them up, and then we usually rent them out. We don't buy and then sell very often. Sometimes we have sold a building here or there, but usually we just rent them. It's important for us to build relationships with our workers, with the tenants who live in them, and also with the community. I'm in my house right now, and I can actually see probably 5 of our rentals that we have. And if I walk to school, because I can walk to my university, I can walk by about 10 or 12 of them. So we live in the community where we have invested. We have about 35 buildings, and of course, some of them are they maybe have 6 apartments in them. So we have 80 plus units and over 120 renters that we are responsible for. Here's a little of the theory at the beginning, and then I'll show you some pictures and concrete examples of what we're doing. So I think a serious problem for us in business and faith is this divided life. Dividing the demands of one's faith from one's work in business is a fundamental error that contributes to much of the damage done by business in the world today. This is from Vocation of a Business Leader. I hope you have read it. If you haven't, I would sure encourage you to. It's from Caritas in Veritate, but it was sort of condensed for business people. It's got a lot of bullet points and pictures. So it's much easier to read than most papal encyclicals. But it's really good for giving some direction to us, I think, as people of faith who want to practice business. Also from Gaudium et Spes, the split between the faith which many profess and their daily lives deserves to be counted among the more serious errors of our age. So how do we bring the two together? We don't just have Monday through Friday and then we go to church on Sunday. How do we bring these together? So an alternative practice is a more humane business, business and faith as a circle. A lot of times we talk about how can business learn from faith? So what does faith have to say to business? But it can go the other way too. And business can begin to be part of your spirituality. And I think that's what the EOC sees, with the seeing business as communion building. And that's what Pope Francis has also said. This is a long quote, but I love this idea of the entrepreneur as an agent of communion. And Pope Francis said this when we were there for the talk. You see the entrepreneur as an agent of communion. By introducing into the economy the good seed of communion, you have begun a profound change in the way of seeing and living business. Business is not only incapable of destroying communion among people, but it can edify it. It can promote it. With your life, you demonstrate that the economy and communion become more beautiful when they are beside each other. Certainly the economy is more beautiful, but communion is also more beautiful. Well, that's great that the business can actually make communion more beautiful too, because it gives us opportunities to interact with each other in a way that can bring about spiritual fruitfulness. Because the spiritual communion of hearts is even fuller when it becomes the communion of goods, of talents, and of profits. So I find this to be a very powerful idea from Pope Francis. And again, he's trying to encapsulate what EOC is trying to do. So I think it's a really good one. Unlike the consumer economy based on a culture of having, the economy of communion is a community of giving. I feel a little bit embarrassed to be even talking to you about the economy of communion. I said yesterday when we were discussing how will this go today, I said, I am the child and I'm talking to my grandparents about the history of something. It's crazy because Italians and the Brazilians are the ones where it came from. And here I am, many generations later, really, talking about EOC. So I feel a little foolish to be talking to you about it, but I want to still share what God has done in our particular corner of the world. So how do we do business differently? We invest faith and hope. That's how I think of it. In buildings, we take on buildings other people did not want to take on. Maybe they thought it should be torn down and we fix it up. So where people see hopelessness, we see, oh, maybe there's a possibility there. Also with employees, we have some great guys working for us, but some of them have had different issues in their lives. Some of it might be from alcohol, might be just financial issues or this or that. And so we try to help those people and give them work that's meaningful, that is gratifying to them. Tenants also, we take on tenants who maybe wouldn't be able to qualify for housing and for other landlords. So a lot of times I will be talking with a tenant who wants to move into an apartment. They say, well, what's the process? And I say, well, right now is an important part of the process. I want to see what kind of a person you are. And it has to be relationally based. So we don't have credit score checks or background checks very often. And even we rent to people who maybe are sex offenders sometimes, or who have backgrounds, or they've had a felony in their past, but we give them a second chance. And it doesn't always work out well, but many times it does. So giving people opportunities that way. We make the business decisions for reasons other than just profit. It's not just about the bottom line for us. I've always been attracted to EOC from the concept of gratuity and reciprocity. And those ideas, hopefully we'll talk more about that as we go on here, but those are key concepts for me. Giving grace to others and they give grace back, and it's reciprocal. But that relational aspect has to be there for me, for this to be attractive for me to practice business. And lastly, relational, not just transactional. You hear this, it's just business, it's nothing personal. Well, we don't really think that way about business. Business needs to be personal. Our lives begin to be integrated into the messiness of others. And I'll speak more to that in a little bit. But a book I love about this idea is someone I'm sure many of you in Italy know. It's Bruni's book, The Wound and the Blessing, has been very powerful for me to think about. When you do business in this different way, you are going to be wounded, but you also will receive blessings from going in that direction. So you might think of business, and you maybe seen this before from Catholic social thought, but good goods, good work, and good wealth. So how can we create good goods? How can I make sure that my workers are having good work that's meaningful to them, that also is pleasant, that is life-giving, not just drudgery? And then good wealth. What do I do with the wealth that we accumulate? How do we use it? Do we use it maybe to keep rents low? We don't have to keep on raising rents, or how do we use it? And so those are, and do we spend it locally or do we spend it far away? So those kind of questions are good for any business person, I think, to think about. And I get this from, again, Catholic social thinking. This is the first house I bought in Omaha. Before I bought it, people were selling drugs out of it. And there was actually, do you know what cockfights are? Where the chickens are fighting each other? So they have this, but dog fighting in the United States, where they have dogs fight each other and attack. And there was a dog fighting ring in the basement. I didn't know, because I didn't know what a dog fighting ring looked like. I just thought it was a strange room. But later, another tenant later said, this is for dog fighting. So I bought this house, I lived in it and rented the other 2 apartments because it was a triplex. And then someone came and wanted to rent my apartment. I said, where will I go? And they said, that's not my problem. And so I found another place down the street, and this is the one then that I lived in. And I lived here for a number of years, this big one, and that's where we would meet on the porch. I'll show you my wife later. My wife, I got married later in life when I was about 40, and my wife didn't want, at this point I was living with 7 other guys in this house. And my wife said, I don't want to live with 7 other bachelors, so you need to find another house. So I moved out of there, but my office is still here for the properties. Again, these are some of the guys who have worked for me. Some of them, most of them are still alive. My friend Izzy here, I'll talk about him in a second. He's not with us, but the others are. And they all are different kinds of guys, but they work for me and do different things for me. This is Izzy. He's one of the first local guys I met. In my neighborhood, when I moved here, it was a neighborhood with a lot of knife fights and prostitutes, if that gives you an idea. And I bought a house, I'll show you in a minute, that was condemned. And Izzy was living in his truck behind the house. And he said, can I keep staying here in my truck until you fix up the house? And it was in the winter in Nebraska, which can be very cold. And I said, why don't you live in the house while you're helping me to fix it? He said, oh, okay. So he knew some skills and I taught him some others, and he really became a very close friend of ours, dependable, like a member of our family. He died he smoked his whole life. So he died of cancer that went to his brain in 2017. But in the last couple of weeks before he finally went and died at the hospital, he was on hospice care. We had him here in our home. So the nurses would come here to our living room. We had his bed and took care of him. But he did so much for us. He was really a blessing from God in our lives. But that's how I met Izzy. And so Izzy was one of a number of people I've met in our neighborhood who are sort of under the radar for the rest of society. But he was a real blessing, and I really enjoy getting to know the guys like Izzy. These are some of the original crew that helped me with things. These 2 guys, Richard Dick, he's a Native American, Omaha tribe, and he loved to get up on high ladders and paint. Mike did a lot of floor stuff, but they both died of alcohol-related issues a few years ago. And then we made sure that they would have a good funeral, because it costs money for that. And so we would make sure they had that and stuff like that. So this is Izzy, and now Izzy's also passed away. So it's many times I meet these guys when they're in their 40s or 50s and they've been hard on their bodies before I meet them, but still we hopefully make their life a little better. Doing different things here, cleaning up, fixing stuff. Izzy learned how to do the glass block here. he already knew how to do brickwork. In the winter, we can't meet on the porch, so we meet inside. Sometimes I'll usually make coffee, but I'll make something else too for the guys sometimes. You're just sitting around drinking coffee before we get going. This is our neighborhood. It's just a common city neighborhood. This is an example of a house. It was condemned. This was the house behind which Izzy was in his truck, and then we fixed it up. So anyway, it's an example of our rehab. Here's a before and after picture of this area. Another one that we have we fixed up. This one is funny because it had been an abandoned sixplex. So it had 6 apartments, 6 toilets, and the homeless had been breaking into it and using it for years. And but the plumbing was not working. So you can imagine what the toilets were like. People were using them, but the plumbing didn't work. And so I said to the guys, this is not your responsibility. This is mine. So I personally made sure to take out the toilets because they were very disgusting. And I thought, this is, I don't pay you guys enough to do something this disgusting. This is my problem because I'm the one who bought this place. So I will take care of that for you. So I have plenty of problems with, you get upset with someone, you get impatient, all the kinds of problems you have as a business owner. But I try to remember the dignity of the guys working for me and take a step back when I get frustrated. So here's an example of some of Izzy's work. Of Izzy's work. He really did nice work. And this is Dewey Street. There's a lot of work we did on this one too. So this is societal impact. So we've bought 28 properties and fixed them up in Omaha, primarily our own Midtown neighborhood. Also some in my hometown, but I'm leaving those out right now. Provide quality low to moderate income housing for tenants. So we have apartments that cost $375, and we have houses that cost anywhere from $850 to $1,500. So pretty reasonable in terms of Omaha market. Responsible for 116 toilets. We increase the taxable value of property 150 to 500% sometimes. So maybe we buy a property at this amount and then we double, triple it, quadruple it. And so then the city is making more money off of us from taxes, right? Oh, sorry, I'll shut this. Established many business relationships and friendships. Helped a lot of tenants in difficult situations, especially during COVID. People maybe lost their job or had different difficulties. And so we tried to be gracious. There was one girl who was 5 months behind. Another one was 6 months behind, but then they caught up eventually, right? So you try to extend grace, be a safety net for them. And we provided income and work for a variety of people in Midtown over the years. Financial impact, invested over $3 million in Midtown, just buying properties and fixing them up. We spend about $70,000 a year on labor to employ local tradesmen, about $70,000 per year on materials. These are just estimates, they're pretty close. I just did taxes, so they're pretty close. About $40,000 a year on public utilities. Our utilities here are public, so that's going to public utilities. $50,000 a year on property taxes, $25,000 a year on insurance, and $35,000 a year on interest to local banks. We only use local banks here in our state. So that's going to them directly. And so then they reinvest in the community. Lots of relationships, tenants, bankers, partners. I have a couple of partners I have a few properties with as well. Employees and contractors, hardware store owner. He's right up the street, so I know him and his guys very well. Plumbers and electricians that do things for me, and even city inspectors. It takes a while to gain the trust of city inspectors, but I think we're on pretty good terms with them, so that's been nice. Pope Francis, another thing he brought up in his meeting was economy and communion. These two words that contemporary culture keeps separate and often considers opposites. Two words that you instead have conjoined, accepting the invitation of Sierra Lubeck offered to you 25 years ago in Brazil, when in the face of scandal of inequality in the city of Sao Paulo, she asked entrepreneurs to become agents of communion. With your life, you demonstrate that economy and communion become more beautiful when they are beside each other. So this goes back to that quote I gave you earlier, I guess. What? Okay. My wife is leaving for work, but she says I need to talk slower. So sorry, Bob, if I'm talking too fast. And Martha. Imitating the Good Samaritan of the gospel is not enough. Of course, when an entrepreneur or any person happens upon a victim, he or she is called to take care of the victim, perhaps like the Good Samaritan, also enlists a fraternal action of the market. I forgot to mention this. One thing I love about the economy of communion is that we are trying to use the market to help people, right? To provide jobs through the economy so they can make their own money and have the dignity of working for the money they have. And I think that's so essential. My guys, they like getting money, but they also become very proud of their work. And they say, hey, did you see what I got done today? Oh, yeah, I saw it. It was good. You did a nice job. But they are very excited to show and to do things. We are working people. We want to work. And so that's important, I think, that we are using the market forces to help. And it's not just a handout, it's using the market to help people. It's important above all, to act above all before the man comes across the robbers by battling the frameworks of sin that produce robbers and victims. An entrepreneur who is only a good Samaritan does half of his duty, takes care of today's victims, but does not curtail those of tomorrow. So in some sense, I tried to take this to heart. How can I, as an entrepreneur, try to help people to not have problems where then they need charity? How can we help them to be self-sustaining and self-reliant, which is what God wants everyone to be, right? To be fully human and fully self-reliant. So the more we can do of that, the better. Business as evangelism also, I think this is an interesting idea. The gospel can grow moldy, right? Like food that is not good anymore. The economy of communion will have a future if you give it to everyone, and it does not remain only inside your house. Give it to everyone, first to the poor and the young, who are those who need it most and know how to make the gift received bear fruit. So we need to be giving out this gift to others and sharing it. Well, that's inspirational to me. One of my last quotes here from this. Business as the love of others. So this is Izzy and Jeff. They are guys who have worked for me a long time, and sometimes they drive me crazy. It's hard to have sometimes the type of workers that we bring on, but I love them. And I need to remember this from Pope Francis. For communion, one must imitate the merciful father of the parable of the prodigal son and not be impeded by the meritocracy invoked by the elder son and by many who deny mercy in the name of merit. An entrepreneur of communion is called to do everything possible so that even those who do wrong and leave their home can hope for work and for dignified earnings and not wind up eating with the swine. No son, no man, not even the most rebellious, deserves acorns. And there he's talking about the parable, of course, of the prodigal son who goes away and then comes home after he's eating acorns and eating whatever the pigs are eating, right? So how to make sure, what are you doing to help people who others would maybe reject as tenants or as workers? And how can we provide grace and mercy to them? Because we all receive grace and mercy, right? Capitalism knows philanthropy, not communion. It's easy for my students to understand that, yeah, when I make a lot of money, I should give some back to school and back to the church. I get it. But there's a difference, right, between that and how do you do the business? How do you practice business in the first place to make money? And so that's the difference, I think, between regular capitalism and communion capitalism, if you want to say it that way. It's not simply to give a part of the profits without embracing and touching the people who receive those crumbs. We want to be involved and touch the people that receive the crumbs. Instead, even just 5 loaves and 2 fishes can feed the multitude if they are sharing of all our life. In the logic of the gospel, if one does not give all of himself, he never gives enough of himself. You already do these things, but you can share more profits in order to combat idolatry, change the structures, in order to prevent the creation of victims and discarded people. Give more of your leaven, so as to leaven the bread of the many. May the no to an economy that kills become a yes to the economy that lets live, because it shares, includes the poor, and uses profits to create communion. This is very challenging from the Pope. I think it's hard. It's a hard challenge for us to meet, but it's good to have that inspiration. Well, just a couple more points and then I'm done. Messiness and wounds of communion. Our way of doing business is more complicated. It involves getting personally involved in the personal problems, messiness of the lives of our tenants and workers, and accepting those as our own. So the reason that most business people don't hire difficult workers is because they don't want difficulties. The reason they don't hire or they don't accept tenants who have bad credit is because that can lead to difficulties. They try to avoid difficulties, avoid wounds. We accept those wounds, but there's also then a blessing that comes from accepting those. We sometimes bring in, when we give a second chance to someone who's a sex offender. I have one right now. And he and his wife and their 4 kids live in one of our houses. And some people have said, why do you rent to a sex offender? I say, because I know him and I think he has really changed. If we don't give him a second chance, who's going to give him a second chance? And so there is this messiness though. I'll get criticism or, have people criticize what we're doing. And it can be a problem. I have to be careful what kind of, especially what kind of tenants I bring in. These are ways that I fail. And so I have to be careful not to bring in tenants who expect that we are running our business like a regular professional firm, because we're not. They might have semi-homeless alcoholics bringing out their trash or being around the building. They have to be comfortable with that. If they are not, I probably shouldn't rent to them because they won't feel comfortable and it won't work for my model. So I need to be cognizant of that when I'm talking to people who might be my tenant. But these are ways I fail. I have poor communication sometimes. I don't explain things clearly, then things don't happen the way I wanted, and that's on me. I provide a bad example. If I'm in a bad mood, pretty soon the guys working for me are in a bad mood. And then I realize, oh, that's because of me. I don't think through a strategy to ensure habits of integrity. Sometimes I'm just flying so quick, I don't stop and think, wait a second, we got to do this in the right way. I let the culture slip towards something against our goals. So maybe we start to not do things quite in the way we should have, and then we get into bigger and bigger problems. Probably my biggest fault is I take on too many things. I try to do too much, and then I'm not able to fulfill all the obligations I have. So this is one of my greatest faults that I have as a person. I also sometimes do things too alone. I don't have enough accountability, sounding boards, friends, and mentors to give me feedback. And that's a problem, I think, as an entrepreneur. I forget what my values are in the midst of short-term urgent demands. And I sometimes objectify people. Even though I have these ideals, I still sometimes just objectify people and treat them as a difficulty or an issue or a problem instead of as a person. So that's my confessional for today. And this is the last one. This is Izzy and me. We were driving around sometime when he was still with us. The first gift of the entrepreneur is of his or her own person. Your money, although important, is too little. Money does not save if it is not accompanied by the gift of the person. And I think that is a good challenge for all of us as entrepreneurs, not just how do we spend our money, but it's much bigger than that, right? That's the great thing about being involved in the EOC is we have a bigger vision of what it is to be in business. It's not just for money. I mean, that's a very simple, you've heard the popes have said, thinking that life is for food because we have to have food is like, it's crazy. Why would we do that? And thinking that business is about profit just because we have to have profit for the business to continue, that's also crazy. We all have to go to the bathroom to stay alive. But does that mean that going to the bathroom is a reason for our living? No, of course not. And so again, with our business, we have a bigger vision of what's going on. What are we doing through our business? And that's what's so exciting about the vision of the EOC. So very short bibliography here at the end. And finally, last but not least, you get to see the crazy lady that married me. This is why she's so crazy. So this is her, she dresses very bright sometimes. This is her spring outfit. Celeste is her name, Celeste. And her father recently moved to a retirement home. So we have inherited a whole bunch of his tools. So here she is spreading out all the tools all over our living room in front of the Christmas tree. It's so she can go through them all and clean them all diligently and then find different toolboxes to put them in. So she loves working on windows, especially. That is her passion for buildings, is to work on the windows. But she's also a philosopher. She teaches ethics at a women's Catholic college here at in Omaha as well. So I want to say, last thing, please do, if you have thoughts on this, we'll talk now, but also you maybe don't want to talk online, but if you have any thoughts on this, what's useful to you from this, I'd love to hear from you. A lot of times you give these presentations and no one ever responds, and that's okay. People are busy, but if you have something you want to say, please do contact me. And you can find any of this stuff at this academia site down here. That's where all my papers and presentations are. So anytime you can go there. Good. That's it for me then. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew, also for having shared with us, how to say, with such an open heart and also confidence, right? So that's really touching, and I was profoundly moved by your sharing. So, and I was also thinking, so you talked at a certain point that you don't want to divide too much the personal life and the business. You say, okay, so life is life and business, and they should not get mixed up. So at the same time, how can you manage this in order not to feel overwhelmed by the workload? And because I can see that being so involved into the company's business and living within the community where you work, so it could be quite overwhelming. So how can you manage that?
That's a great question. And I think, so when I got married, I had to learn, I don't take phone calls during supper, for example. So I have to have some boundaries, right, for my private life. And there are some times where I forget my phone for a little while. I'll say, good, I forgot my phone. I have some peace and quiet for a couple of hours. But I have a responsibility to others. But I think a couple of different points there. One is, Celeste and I, to this point, we don't have children. We still might, but that helps. Both of us are academics, and so that gives us more flexibility. We don't have children that would require more of our attention directly. But I expect if we have children, I want them to come with me when we go around, I want them to be integrated, because this, in some ways, it's challenging to have it messes up your own life, like you're saying. So how do you have this boundary? But there are also real blessings from that too, and so the blessings somehow are outweighing the other things. I have over time, I used to do almost all the work myself, and then I ran into some of these guys and they started to help me. And now I have some guys that are more professional. They do this for a living, and so they help me also. So as we've grown, I've got a few more of those guys that are pretty reliable. I was out of town a couple of weeks ago when it was a terrible storm. We couldn't even come home. And I called one of my guys. I said, hey, can you go and clean the snow? And he said, sure, no problem. So I've got reliable people that help me, right? So I don't have to do everything, but if I've got good people that I can rely on, we have a good relationship, then I can work with them. Also, with my tenants, one time a lady said, why are your rents so cheap? I said, because if your light bulb goes out, I expect you to change it, not me. It's in your apartment. You can change it. She said, oh, okay, that's fine. And so it's important, I think, for the tenants also, they know what we're trying to do. Some of my tenants love the fact that we are using guys that used to be homeless to help do the work. And they love that. And so they don't mind if they have to wait a little bit extra to get things done. But I think building the relationships with the tenants is what really helps. When the crisis comes, then it's a shared crisis. It's not just my problem, because I pay you money, take care of the problem. It's Andy's my friend, kind of, and so we work this out. So that's what helps it, I think, Tana, is really having that relationship. Makes it easier for me and then for them also, and that's an important part of the leaven, I think, in the loaf.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Andrew. And just a last question from me. At the beginning, Mandel was saying that when he firstly met you, he was like, wow, but you are economy of communion and you didn't even know it. So from there until today, what has changed in your life due to economy of communion or thanks to economy of communion? Because you have quoted sometimes Pope Francis and also Luigino Bruni, and we can see that it's something which is really inside you. But at that time, was that so, or what changed from there?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And I think one thing that's very important for me is just to know, and John has said this before, and so has Nick Sana, but one of the most important things for us when we come together as a North American Economy of Communion, it might be a small group, but it's one of the few times where we stop doing what we're doing because we're all in our, I'm taking care of this and John's taking care of his. And so we get together, remember, oh, there are other crazy people trying to do it like we do it. And that's very encouraging to us, I think. So having that network that I know is out there trying, and we have a common vision, that is encouraging to me, and to feel like you're part of something bigger. Even to be here today, to know there are people in Brazil, in Italy, in Africa, all over the world, the Philippines, Asia, who are, trying. And we have different ways God is using us, but there's still something in common that we are trying to do, a uniquely strange way to live out our lives in business. It goes very much against normal business, but I can say, well, I'm not crazy because there are other crazy people with me. So we are together. There's a group who thinks this way. So that's it. Also, I would say, when I found the EOC and Catholic social thought, I found sort of the framework that helped me make sense of my life. I knew I was doing business in a certain sort of way, but now the frameworks that I see in EOC and the values there, I say, oh yeah, this is it. It kind of puts the pieces together. I remember a girl I was dating in college, she became a Christian when I was dating her, and she said, all of my classes make more sense because now I think of it in terms of God constructing the world. Mathematics makes more sense. My grammar makes more sense. Everything makes more sense. And I think finding EOC and also studying Catholic social thought, which is Christian values put to work, has helped me to make sense of the world. It just puts the pieces together. It's like having the cheat sheet to understand, oh yeah, this is how it all should go. Before I was sort of stumbling along, and it turned out, that I was stumbling in the right direction, but I didn't know what I was doing quite in the way that EOC has helped me to formulate that. So.
Wonderful, Andrew. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So also, John, in the beginning, we could see that you kind of take care of some articulations and initiatives in North America. And so how's it going? How do you see the articulation of EOC in North America? And yes.
Well, really, it seems like we always have to start again every so many years, right? It's a new time period. It's a time period of evaluation. And this last year has been no different. We've really tried to stay connected a little bit more, seeing how everyone is living the COVID crisis, and sharing. We just had a weekend last weekend together that we really for the first time reached out to many other organizations that are kindred spirits that really see the economy in a similar way. And so we brought many of them together in a conference last weekend. So yeah, it's a difficult time, I think, just being there with each other. And of course, we have some of the young entrepreneurs like Elizabeth Wallen here, who we've got to tell you her thoughts on what she's been doing and in light of Andy's work, that really give us encouragement to go ahead. We're ready for the next generation. It's been 30 years and we have to pass the torch.
Thanks, John. So today we have here with us also Elizabeth Wadley, who is, we can see that EOC companies are also concerned about social problems and so on. So also at a local level. So we can see here we have Elizabeth Wadley with us, and she is founder and executive director of Project LIA in Indianapolis. And as Andrew, she seeks to include people who would be excluded from the society and give them opportunities, a second chance, as Andrew was saying, did not have otherwise. So, Elizabeth, would you tell us something about the project?
Yeah, well, first I'd like to say thanks, Andy, because that was an amazing presentation. And I really, really appreciate you including a slide there of ways that I fail, because so lately or this past year it's been very at the forefront of like, I'm failing at some things and I'm not doing it right, and kind of trying to sift through that and figure it out. And so that was kind of very refreshing to see. I think we always highlight the successes, but in between all the successes, there's a lot of failures, especially in doing business the way we do business. So just some points that Andy made too that are very similar experiences when you do business, I guess from the start, not for the reason of profit, but as a way of living in community. Actually, I think sometimes you can find definitions of economy not as though it's business, but it's as a way for us as humans to live out in community. So it's exchanges between each other in community. And a lot of that time, that means that it comes with a lot of messiness. And I can see also with Andy there, a lot of disappointment, right? Someone doesn't always meet your expectations, or you didn't make your expectations clear, so you've failed at communicating correctly. So just for those of you who don't know, Project Leah is a social enterprise here in Indianapolis that provides job training and skills training to women who are returning from incarceration, who have spent time in prison. And we do that also with environmental consciousness. So we repurpose discarded material into home furnishings and accessories. And through that, we have a means also then of kind of getting to know one another and getting to know each other's lives. And that provides opportunity for case management and helping individuals in other areas of their lives, such as housing and transportation. So really kind of what Andy said is not only to give people money, but to give yourself and to build community together. And that's really the gift in business.
Thank you really much, Elizabeth. And today I would like to open also for a dialogue. So why don't we start from our Sophia's University student? So if any of you has any question addressed to any of the speakers, John Mandel, Andrew Gustafson, also Elizabeth, just open the mic and speak it up.
Hi everyone. I'm really appreciated all this experience. It's really amazing. Maybe I would like also to share that many of non-profit organizations couldn't do all this work with this concept about the community of communion. The questions I have, it's related to, I think it is one of the aim of these seminars is to get inspired and go everywhere and maybe make what we have learned, but also not only to do this, but also how to inspire another people to get or to grab, I don't know, what is understandable, yeah, to other. So maybe the concept of community of communion, much easier to convince one who is a Christian to do some of this work, or to do this with a concept of helping others or doing good things to others, not only give them a helping or assistance or money. But when the others is not Christian, will be difficult to convince them that it is when you're losing them, you are also receiving blessing. You have said something like that, I think. So it is not easy at all to convince them that the blessing will receive much bigger than the losses. So maybe sometimes you will face issues like that, or maybe one of our representative can share with us such a similar experience with others.
Maybe I'll just say a couple of things and let Elizabeth or Andy add to that. But you know what I found, I used to think that this was, the economy of communion was kind of a Christian concept that we could only kind of like really experience, you know, this idea of death and resurrection, success and failure, you know, because it's built into a little bit of the DNA of the Christian. But my experience has been this, that is that everyone who professes to be a Christian or Muslim or, you know, a Jewish person, many times they don't even see the connection between their faith and how it is lived out in daily life. And so I've had lots of experiences. First of all, people of different religions. In Indianapolis, we work a lot of our social projects we've done with our Muslim friends who have helped us to reach out to the communities, especially during COVID. We've had several initiatives we've worked together on, and they understand this idea of doing something beyond just running a business. And then, and I'll open this up maybe to Elizabeth, we've encountered people who have no particular faith or viewpoint, who are passionate people about humanity and show us ways of loving people that we couldn't have imagined. So in my old thinking, I might have thought, we've got a leg up on everyone being Christians. But my experience over the last 25 years is I've been blessed and inspired by those who don't necessarily share that viewpoint. So maybe Elizabeth, you got a few of those that you could share.
Well, yeah, I think one of the most beautiful things that has come from the work that I've been doing is the amount of community that has been involved. And you get to meet people, and all of a sudden they're so interested and they want to help and they want to be a part of the project. And you're like, oh, wow, they're seeing something that maybe I don't see, because if only I'm looking at it, this is something I'm interested. This is something I like to do, you know? And then all of a sudden, everyone around you wants to do the same, wants to get involved and do the same thing. So I think it speaks kind of, the best person to say it would be Chiara, who said, we don't need to talk about the gospel. We need to live the gospel, right? And in living the gospel, everyone around you will see the light and the love, and so even if they don't know what it is they're doing or joining in, this is love. So yeah, I think that's a bit of the piece there.
I had a couple of things too. I think that I have plenty of atheist friends who have very strong attraction towards the kinds of things EOC is about. They want to help others in the world. They like an alternate view of business. Now we have concepts like John said, death, resurrection, providence. How do you explain that? Maybe in terms of karma? I don't know. But so it's hard to translate it exactly. But I think there are people who like exactly what Liz is saying. They like the action and they want to be part of that action. If they they maybe don't have all the same motivations we have, and they don't see the world quite like we do. But there's that. Two other things. One is I'm Protestant. So one thing I face is how do I translate Catholic social thought and some of the EOC stuff to Protestants? It's not so hard with EOC for the most part, but Protestants are always a little bit suspicious of anything that comes from a pope because they're Protestants, right? And so they are more suspicious that way. But so I face that challenge, but I think there is plenty there. I have my students in my MBA class read Vocation of a Business Leader, that piece. And I remember one time after class, I had some Catholic business leaders talking to us after that we had the discussion and everything. At the end of class, one guy came up, he said, I love this Vocation of a Business Leader. And he was a Shia Saudi. So he's a Shia Islam follower who's from Saudi Arabia. He said, I wish we had something like this in Islam to give us this direction. And the last thing I would say, Sama, is I think we have plenty. I mean, maybe it's harder to help non-Christians understand EOC, but we have so much work to do just to help Christians to learn how to practice their faith. I grew up around Christians who think the purpose of business should be to introduce people to Jesus. And by that, they mean give them a pamphlet or explain the message of Jesus Christ dying on the cross for their sins, which is very good, but there's so much more to the gospel than that, right? Living it out in the way that Liz was talking about it. And so I think there's this whole other world for a Christian business person to think about. And if it's true what I said about business helping to be a spiritual component and help your spirituality, there are so many ways for a Christian to grow when their 8 hours a day in business or 10 hours a day in business begins to be part of their spiritual growth, right? When those are bifurcated, well, that's dead time spiritually. But when they're unified together, well, now all of life is a spiritual possibility. And so there's so many Christians in the world. I mean, it's good to think about the others too, but there are plenty of Christians who maybe their lives can be enhanced greatly through what EOC has to say. And we have a huge amount to do there before we even start to think about, how to help an atheist to appreciate the EOC. But I do think, like Liz said, there's plenty to appreciate there for someone who's not a person of faith. This is a great question. Great question.
Yeah, great question. Yeah.
Can I ask another one?
Hey, go for it.
Yeah.
Raise hands.
Yeah, about the last the project where we maintain the houses, how you deal with I think you have told us that you deal with the people who have I don't know how to say it, maybe don't accept it in the community. The people we don't accept it in our community, and you try to give them another chance.
Mm-hmm.
If they disappointed you and it causes a lot of money, maybe big losses, it's hard to have the same concept, to repeat the same experience another time.
Yeah, and this is one of the dangers of my model, is sometimes when I take on my employees' problems, now my employees' problems begin to be my tenants' problems. And so that's not good. So there have to be points at which you can have grace, but there still have to be limits because of all kinds of reasons, but fairness to other tenants and things. Even with Izzy, who I love dearly, he's like my long lost Puerto Rican uncle. But there were times when he would just drink and drink and drink for a long time and not do anything. I'd say, Izzy, you have to move out of the place I gave you to stay, or something, or I'm taking away your truck or something. And then he'd come, a month later, he would come back or something. And so there have to be, with a child, you try to give grace, but you still have to have some discipline. And so it's the same to a certain extent. It's with a second chance. You know, they can't push it too far because we are still trying to serve other people. And if they begin to be a hindrance to others that we're trying to serve, they're not fitting in the way we need them to. So
one thing I'd add to that too, and this is getting how this impacted me, you know, is like you said, if someone disappoints you, you could begin to, after a while, write people off. I'm tired of helping these people, you know, things are, and occasionally in the last 25 years, I've had those kind of conversations with myself. Okay, this is it. I can't do it. But it's the concept of the spirituality of communion is the ability to live in the next moment without thinking about the past. You know, we talk about using the windshield wipers on our eyes to start again and fresh, which is a real gift. But that comes a little bit with training. I would say it's like a Olympic athlete. You know, they become better at it the more they practice. And I would say I'm better at starting again than I was 25 years ago. But I still have to make that choice to start again and to have that hope that things will be different. And of course, what happens is in that choice I make, I am always surprised when beautiful things happen, when providence comes, when something miraculous happens. And I've had enough of those experiences that I don't even now think about it so much. It's in my DNA where I think something's amazing is going to happen with this absolute chaos I'm in. I'm just waiting for the next moment to see what that is. So it's something that you develop that as an entrepreneur over time, and you're surprised. But you still have to make those choices. And tomorrow, I'm sure I'll be faced with the same thing, disappointment or difficulty. And there's a certain amount of suffering that the entrepreneur takes on and realizes that's my vocation. Suffering is my vocation. Maybe that's a subtitle of the EOC. Suffering is my vocation. But suffering for why? To build this unity and this communion we can build in the economy.
Surprise. Yeah, there is another question from our colleague Simona. How you would like to share with us, Simona?
Okay. Yes, sure. Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank you deeply because your experience was so impressive, really. I was thinking like a heart that washed the blood. Okay, you in some way you are doing this job. It's a hard job, but it's a very precious one. And doing business, that's great. Doing business. Okay, yeah, as Benedetto told before, I am a PhD research student here in Sophia, and I would like to go deeper in this big issue about purpose. You know, there's a lot of talk nowadays about purpose, the purpose of enterprises, and you talk about purpose too. And so what I would like to ask you, if you could define in your perspective, in your vision, what is the true purpose of your business, and how it's very clear that its purpose is to serve society, but yeah, I see something more. So if you can share, and also if you can share in your opinion, is what do you think about all companies that don't have this background, this faith background, how to help to find their purpose? Thank you.
I think that's always the hard question for a business, I think, to answer. The philosophical question of what is it you are doing? I mean, obviously we're giving housing to people, but I know what the purpose of my business is not. And that is, it's not just to make money, because there's a lot of other easier ways to make money. But I do like making the money so I can do other things that we do through the business. To fix up old houses. I love to fix up old houses and protect them from getting torn down. I like to work with my guys. We've done things like I helped I have a fellow that works for me in Aurora, and we helped him to purchase his own rental property. So he has that. Another friend that works for me quite a bit, I helped him to buy a farm. So he had a place for his family. And so these are the things, for me, the purpose of the business is to be a source of some revenue. So then we can do other good things, as well as through the business itself to provide, we provide cheaper housing for people than most what they can find. And I enjoy that. So we generally do that for people. Most people like the apartments we fix up and appreciate what we do. So that's rewarding. And I like also when people have problems, to fix their problems. I like to help people. Sometimes it's difficult if it's 10 o'clock at night and they have a problem. I don't really want to get out of bed, but I enjoy the opportunities that come through our business to help people. I think that's what makes it life-giving to me and what motivates me to do it. It'd be a lot easier to just put money in some investment and not think about it. But I wouldn't find that very interesting. We've even bought houses before. I kind of felt, I don't really want another project, but we don't have work for the guys, so we need to get another house so they have something to do. So even that, it's a strange reason to buy a house, but I've done that before. I can say I have. So you have stranger purposes, I think, as an EOC entrepreneur, maybe than you do otherwise. I don't remember, what was the second question you had?
Yes, I would like to ask you your opinion about how do you think that businesses in general may find their purpose now? Because Davos Manifesto, for example, speaks about the general purpose of a business is to serve society. But yes, it's a very general definition, but now I think there's a great call for everyone to do something actively for the environment, for the society. We cannot allow crisis like such we have seen. So something, if you have any idea, if you want to share, also for Leah too, for Elizabeth too. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to hear what John has to say to you, the first question especially too. But I would say, in business ethics, I'm teaching our business students. And generally they are taught that the purpose of the business is to make money for the stockholders. And I think that's true, but then there's more to it than that. There's more purpose than just that. That's a purpose, but it's not all the purpose. And so to help people start to see the diversity of purposes of a business is important. And you don't have to be a Christian to see that. And I think, you talk to most very wealthy, successful entrepreneurs like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs. They didn't start their business to become billionaires. They started their business because they loved to do what they were doing. But there's other things that come beyond just the money. People come to me and they say, I want to start investing in real estate. I say, why? They say, I want to make a lot of money. I say, that's probably a bad reason to get into this because it's very messy. You have to have other motives to stick with it. Besides just that, there's other easier ways probably. And so they have a very transactional approach. And whatever I can do to help a business person or a student to not have a transactional approach to business will make their lives more meaningful. John, I'd like to hear your thoughts though on her first question, the purpose of business.
Well, I'll say a couple of things and I'll turn it over to Elizabeth. But, over the years I used to, our view of the economy of community really has also evolved over the 30 years. At first it was about, let's end poverty. This idea of providing money to people, giving them jobs. And then over time, this idea of my purpose, we do environmental work. So someone could say, my purpose is to clean up the world. And that's a beautiful thing as well. But I think in the EOC, I've come to realize my purpose is to become a weaver of community, the fabric of community, wherever I am. that really has settled in my soul is what we really do. We really make connections of all types in our business, around where a business works. We build bridges. At the end of the day, I think, what bridge have I built? And these are bridges that are invisible bridges sometimes. That, in the world, people like to say, hey, I've done this or that. I'm Elon Musk. I've got Tesla. But these invisible bridges that we build that people may not realize they're there now, but you see the connections that happen. That's one of the things I've enjoyed. And those bridges that occur between the have and the have-nots, and the rich and poor, and the different races now. Racial justice is a huge thing that's going on. So yeah, that's one of the things that strikes me. Elizabeth, maybe you got some other thoughts.
I think pretty much the same thing. Like, we engage in business to solve problems. We see a problem and trying to find a solution for it. I think the important thing to think of as an entrepreneur or as someone who's starting a business is to think, okay, does my solution solve this problem? But am I also creating a whole set of other problems through my solution? And I think sometimes we don't ask that question enough in business. We're just like, okay, it solves the problem, let's do it. It makes sense, it makes money. It doesn't matter what the collateral costs of that business are. And I think we're starting to see more business owners think through that question and say, well, how does my business create other issues or other problems that then need to get resolved? And then also, for me particularly, the reason for business is to build community and to increase the number of interactions between various members of our community that might not otherwise happen. And so that's something that I'm always looking for, is like, what can we engage in? What activity with the community can we do that increases our interaction between different people on a very organic level? Because I think when you are able to create these more organic instances, it is a lot of positive impact from that.
Elizabeth, I remember one experience I had that you gave me. One night I was driving one of Elizabeth's workers who had spent time in prison home after an event. And after I had this exchange with her in the car, taking her home, realizing our differences and dropping her off, I had this profound experience afterwards of just like realizing how connected we were and how we were a lot alike. And I had not, how this experience of the economy of communion had given me the opportunity to open my eyes. So in a selfish way, the purpose of my business is to transform me. Sometimes I think, may not do anything else for anybody else, but boy, for me, I'm no longer John, the have to achieve this or that. It's John, the human being who's connected to everyone else,
Yeah, John, it might not be the reason for it, but it's certainly a collateral consequence of doing business, is a self-transformation.
Exactly. Collateral consequence. I love that. That's great. Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. John Mandel, Andrew, and Elizabeth. Our time is almost up, unfortunately, because we could stay here all day long talking of this. So yes, I would like to thank you from the deepest of my heart, because our moment here today was really enlightening and enriching for each one of us, I think I can say. And yes, so I would also like to thank and to greet everyone who joined us today, members of Economic Communion and everybody, Sophia University students. So for this really inspiring moment also built by you guys. So thank you really much. Yes, John?
Hey, Tanya, I just wanted to also, we don't have enough time for everyone, but I just got to have a big shout out to Tess Ganzon for the inspiration from the Philippines she's given for the last 30 years that has been a tremendous blessing for all of us. And I have to say this because she's on the line and I don't get to say it enough. So she didn't get to share anything today, but oh my gosh, the ripple effects from the Philippines have been like tidal waves across the world. So thanks, Tess.
Yes, for sure. If you want to take over the floor for a little while, Teresa, you're most welcome. You're on mute, your mic.
Okay there.
Here we go.
No,
Thanks.
in fact, I want to thank Ben for inviting me tonight and reminding me about it today. And Andy, I've heard your experience before in Luminosa, but it's always great to hear it. And I have to say that tonight was like a big review and recall. I've been retired from the bank for about 2 years now. I'm still part of it in a way, but very not in management. And looking towards doing something different, still along the line of a social business. We're developing a farm. We want to and tonight was a review of all the basic principles again, and to say, okay, we are starting something new. I must make sure that this, we have to clarify our vision, it's and the values that we want to bring into this new enterprise. So thank you for that review, Andy and John. It's been always great, Elizabeth and everybody else. I mean, thank you for tonight. Yes, it's always a start every day. It doesn't matter how many years we've been trying to live this reality, but there's always something new to learn, and it's always a start. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Teresa. It's our honor to have you here with us. So, yes, a big thank you to our technical team, translators, and hosts for your precious help. And see you all on April 22. It's our next webinar of this series. And we are going to have an experience from Latin America. So stay tuned to have all the details and don't miss anything. Okay, so thank you very much again, guys, and see you all on April 22. Goodbye.
Thank
Good
you
evening.
for
Morning.
your time and sharing experience.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good
Benedetto,
morning,
thank you so
afternoon,
much.
evening, and night.
Thanks.
Sharing.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Take care. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.